Good afternoon, Mr. Masters. First of all, I would like to know from you why you started writing and how it came about.
Oh, why am why am I a writer rather than anything else? Because there were certain things I wanted to write about which nobody else did, and I thought somebody's got to fill the gap, so let me try. I started because I wanted to learn something, and indeed, writing about other people is, in a peculiar way, a means of finding out about oneself. Because you can only understand other people through the prism of your own experience. And if you see echoes, they can't be exact, but if you see echoes in your own experience, your own life, your own past, your own events which have happened to you, thoughts which you have had, if you see those reflected in the lives of other people, you could draw not conclusions but inferences. And the truth lies in inferences, not in certainties.
And the subjects that you like to write most and why.
I most enjoy writing the biography of somebody who possibly has not been written about before, or or if they have been written about before, they've been misunderstood. Um, the fun in that is not only in discovering what might be the truth and how it might affect myself or the reader, what truths he or she may see reflected in the life that I'm writing about. Not only that, but the extraordinary excitement of discovery.
Do you have to draw a psychological map of that person in order for you to transport yourself into his or her reality, into her shoes, if you like?
Yes, you have to be able to think what she was thinking that day. It's no good just describing events that occurred. She got on a bus at 4:30 in the afternoon and went to Hammersmith and did some shopping and then came home again and had a row. There's nothing in that. So it's not the events which matter, it's the internal events. It's what is happening in her heart and in her head which indicate who she is and why she led that particular life, why she made those particular choices, why she got angry about that particular insult. Only when you know her from the inside can you work out, can you see why her responses were the way they were. Now, that becomes very, very dangerous, of course, if you're dealing with a subject which is sinful, to use an old religious word. If you're trying to understand, I did a biography of Marie Corelli, I said, I've done a biography of Georgiana, Duchess of Devonshire, 18th century character. Long before Amanda Foreman came along, she did another one 20 years later, plundered all my work, and posed naked in Tatler. I forgot to do that. So she actually managed to make herself incredibly famous. Uh, I did a biography of Georgiana, Duchess of Devonshire, and then I've done three biographies of murderers. Now, if you're looking at Georgiana, Duchess of Devonshire, you have to work out why she married the man she married, what she felt like when she married him, why she had such a close relationship with her husband and her husband's mistress. Her husband's mistress was her best friend. You have to work out by reading between the lines of the letters they exchanged what was really going on in that ménage à trois. But that's not dangerous. If you're studying a murderer who's killed and dismembered 14 young men and then flushed them down the lavatory and kept a job going as an account executive at the job centre, interviewing people, and was very popular, and went on marches, political marches, and was very left wing and had great ideals. If you're going to work out how it is possible for those two men to exist within one head, you've got to get into that head yourself. And that is dangerous, because I did know. I wrote a biography of Dennis Nilsen, who killed all these people in 1983. He was arrested and tried in 83. But I got to know him personally very well, and I got to know his life very well, and I got inside to see the world through his eyes. And you can see the inherent danger in that. Now, I've been protected from it because just as the letters of Georgiana, Duchess of Devonshire, in an archive box in a castle in the north of England are my archive material, the material I work with in order to build the picture that I want to convey. So, with the murderer, the archive material are statements made to the police archives, photographs, evidence presented in court, and my own interviews with the murderer.
How do you then select the key elements, the key moments or events that are part of someone else's life to be selected into the biography of that person?
You have to consider all the sorts of things that happened and then see which one was the key to his character, which one or two or three. It's what the French call une idée maîtresse, the overwhelming idea. If I may go back to Nilsen, because it is a very good point, it's a good illustration. It's not enough to know that he killed people. It is enough for the court. All the court needs to do is prove the actual fact that there were people who were alive and they became dead because of him. He caused their death. That's all they need to know. They don't want to know why. I want to know why, and I want the reader to find out with me why. And so you try to find this idée maîtresse. Now, Nilsen was obviously in love with death. He liked the idea of creating death. I don't. Very few other people do. So why did he? What happened? So I went back into his childhood and found that he came from a little place in Aberdeenshire. His mother was Scottish, his father was Norwegian, but they hadn't lived together. There was a Norwegian soldier in the Second World War, and she was a pretty young girl, and they'd had a relationship, and this was the result. But he never met his father, the little boy didn't. The only person who mattered to him in his life was his grandfather, because his mother didn't touch him. She told me I couldn't touch him, I don't know why. And I wanted to say to her, well, that's, it's your fault, not his, but there we are. I think it's because she felt guilty. She felt guilty. But his grandfather had no guilt, and his grandfather and he were great friends. And the grandfather used to go away to sea as a fisherman for weeks on end. And Dennis would always look forward to his coming back. And when he came back, he would go for walks along the beach with him, and he would hear tales of what happened at sea, and it was all very exciting. And he'd gradually fall asleep, and the old man would carry him home in his arms. And one day he got back from school. He was 6 years old, I think. And his mother said, "Do you want to see your granddad?" "Oh, yes." That's very exciting. And she was taken into the kitchen, and there was a long box on the kitchen table. And in it was his grandfather. Nobody bothered to explain to him that he was dead. And I thought, that's the idée maîtresse. That's when it happened. His idea of love, the only person in the world he loved, and his idea of death got confused at that moment. And that ruined his life.
You go deep into the core of this person, the source of energy of that person, and then you're working from that area outwards.
Outwards, yes. And then the jigsaw puzzle starts to fit, and you can see. So that's why he behaves in this way. I did a biography of John Aspinall. John Aspinall was a gambler. He changed the gambling laws in England as a result of his casino activities. But he was also a passionate believer in the equalities of all the species. Why he was such a good host at his parties, his dinners, because he believed so much in the interactivity of human beings, not only with each other, but with other species. There were always other species around. And it always made everybody happy. It all comes from that one insight. Species do not have to hate each other. They do eat each other. That's what makes the world go round. But that's a totally different thing from going in with a gun and terrorizing a creature. That came from one insight. Once you found the insight, everything else flows from it. And then you've got the book. You can explain. And you can enjoy explaining, and you can enjoy the journey of discovering what this man achieved, why and how he achieved it.
When you write about a person, a biography of someone, are you always trying to elevate this person? Are you always trying to find a good angle, the humanity of this person? I mean, how can you be partial or impartial when you're writing about someone else's biography, for example?
You have to be detached, you have to be impartial, in the sense that you mustn't impose upon that person's character something that you want to be there. You can't invent anything, and nor should you shift the emphasis in such a way as to make him nicer than he really is, or nastier than he really is. So the impartiality is of the essence. But if you find that the character is so deplorable, so disgusting, so unattractive, that you don't want to continue with it, then stop. Don't write a book which is going to make you feel either miserable or depressed. There's an actress I know, very famous actress. I suppose I better not use her name, but she's well known to all of you, especially if you go to see James Bond films, who is such a sweet and nice woman. She was very, very reluctant to do one of the great Shakespeare roles, which is Lady Macbeth, in the play which all actors call the Scottish play, because they're so superstitious about it, they won't use the word Macbeth. She's such a sweet woman, but she had to become a malicious and wicked and evil woman in order to play the part. And it made her ill. I mean, she was really upset at having to play that part and was glad when it was all over. It all ties in with what I was saying earlier about the writer identifying with the subject. You can't identify with him, but nor must you keep him apart. You've got to be able to see the world through his eyes. And she had to see the world as Lady Macbeth would see it, not as she would. And then she was able to play the part. And I'm able to write the book if I can see the world through my subject's eyes and not my own.
What makes you write about a particular person? What are the elements there on that particular personality that you want to investigate that drive you towards that person? And the other question would be why you wrote about Dennis Nilsen's life.
I'm always interested in people who are out of the ordinary. Even if it's a greengrocer, it's got to be an extraordinary greengrocer, not an ordinary one. People who are out of the ordinary, mavericks, if you like, large personalities, or people who have done extraordinary things, can illuminate the ordinary lives of the rest of us. Because there isn't much which makes us differ from them. It's just something in the personality which made them lift themselves to do something unusual. Now, whether it be, as in the case of John Aspinall, starting a new way for the world to think about animals in captivity, which he did, the whole world followed his example, or whether it's like Georgiana or E.F. Benson, the writer of the Map and Lucia books, somebody who, or just an explorer, somebody who goes to the pole. It's got to be somebody who is out of the ordinary, larger than life, a bit larger than life. Now, in the case of a murderer, it's stating the obvious, isn't it? We don't all murder people. We all do sometimes feel, God, I could kill him. But we don't do it because we have a natural inbuilt respect for life and fear of doing anything which conquers life. But a murderer doesn't. So that makes him unusual. And if it's unusual, it's worth studying, because then we will see what the ordinary lives are really like by seeing how an extraordinary life can illuminate it, backwards as it were.
And why we humans are reading books, we are reading stories. What connects us to storytelling?
Oh, human beings have always, from time immemorial, been fed on stories. They need stories. They need a shape. We don't understand the world. We don't understand why we're here. We don't understand what we're here for, if it's for anything. We don't understand about life and death, the mysteries of it all. So we create stories to make a framework to if we can have a narrative which explains things, then we feel a bit more secure. This is why religions are invented. They're all stories which are made up to explain the inexplicable. We call them myth, if you like. But all the stories which we grew up with, I don't mean we, I mean our ancestors, before books ever existed, the stories which were passed down orally from one generation to the next were myths. They were ways of shaping life in a way which they could finally understand. It didn't matter whether it was true or not, it mattered whether it was possible. And the possibility is enough in itself. So of course we need stories. We look to stories for our security, to explain the world to us. Without stories, we'd be adrift, like flotsam, bouncing up and down on the wave, never reaching the shore. The stories take us to shore and give us a home.
When you start writing, do you know from the beginning where are you going? Do you know from the start the ending of your story?
No, you don't know. I don't know where I'm going, which makes it interesting to do. If I did know where I was going, I'd be bored, wouldn't I? I'd be impatient to get there. I'm discovering the subject as I go along.
My last question to you, what would be your advice to starters, to people that just starting to write the very first book, they are willing to develop that skills on writing?
The biggest problem is, of course, lack of encouragement. A young person who wants to write, is very easily dissuaded if he feels, well, nobody wants to read it, nobody's going to publish it, I'll never get it accepted anywhere, and I don't know how to anyway. It's very easy to be negative. So you've got to create some positive aspect, and the positive aspect is enjoyment. So you give yourself a subject. Don't try to write a whole book. Give yourself a subject. It could be something mundane. It could be, let's think of an example. A shop has just opened round the corner. It used to be a very untidy and miserable shop, but it's been taken over by new people, and they've put in new colours, and they've got a different way of dealing with the customers. And okay, write about that. What has made this shop so much better than it was? Choose your words carefully. Make sure you convey with the words your own excitement at seeing how much better the shop was than it was before. Tell a story about what it was before. Then tell a story of what it's like now. But above all, work on the words you choose. And the satisfaction you get out of having conveyed to the reader, if there is a reader, of having conveyed to the paper, having found the words to describe why it is that shop is so much better than it used to be. The satisfaction you feel will indicate whether you are a writer or not. If you don't get the satisfaction, if you get bored and you'd rather listen to the Spice Girls, then don't be a writer. Try something else.